In episode 7, we get more backstory on how the Ghoul knows Lee Moldover. Back when he first met her, she wasn't going by that name. She was going by a different one. And at first, Coop just sat in the meeting listening to it, but he could only take so much, and eventually he got up to leave, and she confronted him about it. She basically gave the same pitch that his friend gave, that Vault-Tec is making a lot of money based off the end of the world. And she knows it because she knows Coop's wife. It turns out that Lee's research company was acquired by Coop's wife's division. What Lee's company was on the verge of achieving was cold fusion. Basically, it's infinite energy. And just as she was on the verge of achieving it, Vault-Tec swept in and bought up every company she worked for. She then tells him that Vault-Tec bought the solution to end the war, but that wasn't going to be beneficial for him, so they stuck it in a closet. What she really wants is for Coop to help her get that solution back, and she hands him a listening device. She wants Coop to spy on his wife, but Coop doesn't want to do that, goes to give it back to her, and she says no, keep it. On the ride home, Coop thought about it and decided, yeah, all right. He connected the listening device to his wife Barb's Pip-Boy so that he would be able to listen to anything she said. And then he waited to see if what they said was true. But now that present-day Coop knows that Lee is the one that he talked to years ago, he wants to get to her. After holding a family at gunpoint, he finds out that Lee is at the conservatory. So he heads there. On his way to the conservatory, he finds that the dog, Dr. Wilzig's dog, is locked in an empty freezer. And the dog was put there by Thaddius, who was following Thaddius because Thaddius had the head. And Thaddius got tired of the dog just being a lackey, so he decided to put him in the freezer. And a couple hours later, he was found by the Ghoul. The Ghoul knows that he struck gold by finding the dog because the dog will be able to track the head. And as for Thaddius, he continued to make his way through the wasteland, but his banged up foot, the one that was injured when he was fighting with Maximus, it's in really, really, really bad shape. I mean, it is mangled up. He's making his way through the wasteland, but he's just hobbling at this point. And that's when he's stopped by a good old-fashioned wasteland snake oil salesman claiming to be a doctor who can help Thaddius out. Since Thaddius is in extreme pain, he takes him up on the offer. He gives Thaddius a potion, and in turn, Thaddius gives him Maximus's fusion core, which is worth a whole lot of money. And the potion works. It fixes Thaddius's mangled foot back to new. It's going to make getting back to the Brotherhood a lot easier. And after fixing his foot, the next stop he goes to is a radio station. Using the radio station, he's able to radio the Brotherhood, let him know where he is, so that they can pick him and the head up. And Thaddius is honestly lucky he made it through because the guy running the radio station has the whole place booby-trapped. If you get close, you're likely to hit one of those booby traps and die. But Thaddius made it through. And for the time being, he's just sitting, waiting for the Brotherhood to pick him up. Now, as for his former Brotherhood member, Maximus, he's none the wiser of the fact that Lucy is currently in custody with Bertie and Overseer Benjamin. And they try to set the record straight. They aren't doing any experimentation. It was the original Vault Dwellers who did the experimenting. They experimented on people that they trapped from the wasteland, and eventually those people rebelled. The current leadership of Vault 4, they're not doing any experimentation whatsoever. They've changed the culture of Vault 4. Lucy just says, look, that sounds horrible, but that's not the way it goes in my vault. And Benjamin asks, what was the experiment in Vault 33? And Lucy's completely oblivious to any experimentation that went down in Vault 33, so she just says there wasn't one. And both Bertie and Benjamin look at each other like, do you actually believe that she doesn't know this? Whether they believe her or not, though, they tell her that she has to pay the price. So they escort her to, quote, pay the price. And as they're escorting her, that's when finally Maximus notices that Lucy has been taken into custody. And even though he's loving life in the vault, he has to help her out. They go through this big ceremony and they chain Lucy up, and it looks like they're going to kill her. But in reality, they're just going to let her go. While they were doing the song and dance, though, Maximus was gearing up. He stole the fusion core, he put it in his suit of armor, and he went to go save Lucy. He smacked around a bunch of the Vault 4 dwellers. Until finally Lucy says, Maximus, they're letting me go, it's fine. And they do let them go. But once they're up on the surface, Lucy notices that Maximus stole their fusion core. And she knows what a fusion core means to a vault. She knows that they're not going to have a lot of time to live without it. She kind of guilt trips Maximus to returning it. Even though that means that if they return the fusion core, Maximus is going to have to leave his armor there. But with Lucy guilt-tripping him, he feels like he has no choice. So he does return it. Once he does that, Lucy invites him to live with them in Vault 33. She feels like Maximus is the first good person she's met out in the wild. But when Lucy says that Maximus seems like a good person, Maximus feels like he has to come clean to her. He has to tell her that his name is actually Maximus, not Thaddius, and Thaddius was the knight whose armor he basically took. But Lucy doesn't really care. She still invites him to live with her at Vault 33. And that's an offer that Maximus takes her up on. But before they go back to Vault 33, they have to find the head. So they head out. And as they make their way through the wasteland, back at Vault 33, there's a little bit of drama because it looks like somebody poisoned a lot of the raiders. And it sure does seem like Norm might be the culprit. But in the meantime, they have a bigger thing going on. They're going to split up the vault. Some people go into Vault 33, some people go into Vault 32. Norm will be staying in Vault 33. Some of the people going to Vault 32 are Woody, Chet, and Stephanie. Norm goes to visit Chet, and he's surprised that Chet is just willing to go into Vault 32, especially after everything he saw. At one point, he calls Chet a coward, and Chet just nods and says, yeah, Norm, we all are. We're living in a vault. Everybody going to Vault 32 has to pack up, and a little while later, they go through a ceremony before they leave Vault 33 forever to start their new lives in Vault 32. And before they do that, they need an overseer. And who does Betty pick? She picks Stephanie. Because after all, Stephanie's from Vault 31. As everybody heads off through the door to Vault 32, Norm decides to sneak off and hop on Betty's computer. He messages the overseer from Vault 31. He tells the overseer that the mission isn't going good and he needs to return to Vault 31 immediately. And the overseer from 31 says, okay, come over. So Norm heads over and the vault opens up and he heads in. Back on the outside, though, his sister, along with Maximus, have made their way to the radio station. They didn't know it, but they inadvertently found Thaddius waiting for his pickup from the Brotherhood. Thaddius tries to fire a gun at him, but he's a horrible shot, and then he trips one of the booby traps, which puts an arrow through his neck, although it doesn't kill him. He can't quite figure out why. And then he pulls the arrow out, and it immediately heals, and that's when Maximus says, Thaddius, I think you're a ghoul. And Thaddius knows, in fact, he is now a ghoul. He never should have trusted that snake oil salesman. Before he can really digest the fact that he now is a ghoul, everybody hears the Brotherhood's helicopters coming. Thaddius knows that if the Brotherhood finds out he's a ghoul, he's going to be dead. So Maximus says, give me the head. It'll give you time to run and get out of here. And with no other options, Thaddius says, yeah, okay, here, thanks, man. And he heads off. But Maximus has no plans to give the head to the Brotherhood. He takes one of the other heads that's lying around, he smashes it, and he gives the actual head to Lucy and tells her, they're not going to know what head it is. So this will give you time to go and get your father. Lucy vows not to leave. Maximus says they're never going to stop looking for it, so head off. And finally, they end up kissing. Right before she leaves, she tells Maximus to find her at Vault 33. She'll be waiting. And then Maximus just waits to get picked up. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.